Chapter 17. Snake left the medical room and found himself in familiar surroundings. He was in the first basement of the original building, near the prison cells where he had seen Anderson and Merrill. He decided to search the outer area where Johnny's office was located. Maybe he could find some Socom ammunition and more grenades. Snake fitted the sound suppressor onto the handgun and edged around the corner to look. A lone guard sat at a desk reading a newspaper. The kid gloves were off now. No fooling around. Snake shot the man in the head. He then aimed the Socom at the brand new security camera that someone had installed during the last couple of hours and blew it to bits. He moved into the room and found the cell where Anderson had been. Using Johnny's cell door key, he swiped it in the lock and opened it. What the hell? Anderson's corpse was still lying on the floor where he'd had a heart attack and died. He still looked fresh, too. Then who was the other guy? He didn't have time to ponder the mystery. Snake left the cell and went straight to Johnny's office. He shot the lock off a steel cabinet, opened the doors, and found what he was looking for. Plenty of ammunition for both the Socom and the PSG-1. Some frag, stun, and chaff grenades. C4 explosives, and a splendid commando knife that looked like it was a Fairburn Sykes, US Marine issue. Snake took as much as he could carry, made sure the weapons were fully loaded, and then strapped the knife's sheath to his right calf. He was curious about a large flat box on one of the cabinet shelves. He pulled it out, set it on Johnny's desk, and opened it. He almost laughed aloud. You don't find many of these in crackerjack boxes. It was what they called a tank torso, a Kevlar-coated M1-11 combat vest. In other words, body armor. He pulled it out of the box and was surprised by its light weight. Nevertheless, he put it on and strapped it tight. It wouldn't stop a Nikita rocket shell, but it might protect him from a bullet or two. Couldn't hurt to keep it. Snake? He glanced at the codec. It was Master Miller's frequency. Hey, he answered. I heard you had a little trouble. Nothing a good massage and a bottle of vodka wouldn't cure. You know, I was tortured in Nam. The Viet Cong were vicious little bastards. But I had the satisfaction of blowing the brains out of the chief interrogator when I escaped. I plan on doing the same thing to Revolver Ocelot. What's up? Snake, I need you to change brands. Those cigarettes you like are going out of style. Snake understood. That was code that meant he should switch to a secure frequency. Do you have a suggestion? Snake asked him. I like the ones with the gold band, 23% nicotine and 7% tar. I'll keep that in mind, thanks. He signed off and configured the codec to receive messages from the frequency 23.7, which was unusual since codec frequencies normally began with the number 1. Master Miller's voice returned a few seconds later. You there, Snake? I'm here. I didn't want the Colonel or anyone else hearing this. What? I've heard some very disturbing chatter in the intelligence community. What do you mean? I think you should be very wary of your internal contacts, and that includes our friend Roy and that doctor, even the Secretary of Defense. Houseman? I know it's hard to believe, but there's a traitor in your midst. Watch your back. Wait, how do you know that? But Miller had already signed off. Snake grumbled and tuned the codec back to receive his normal channels. Colonel. Yes, Snake. Campbell sounded tired. I'm on my way back to the communication tower. I've got a long way to go. We know. Mei Ling, what kind of intel do you have on enemy activity between Snake's position and the comms tower? The woman reported, We're still having satellite interference because of the storm, and the underground shielding doesn't help. But I think you can bet that most of the genome soldiers are now located in the other buildings, closer to the two towers and the building north of that, the underground maintenance base. Nevertheless, exercise extreme caution, Snake. I always do, Colonel. Thanks, Mei Ling. He signed off and made his way to the tank hangar, where he had first seen the Abrams he had destroyed. The huge room was devoid of humans, and it seemed that all the power was off. Not only that, the cargo door was still open. The wind had blown snowdrifts several yards into the hangar. Mei Ling was right. They were all in the other buildings. Except for the lone guard in the cell area, the terrorists had abandoned this facility. But what had happened to Revolver Ocelot? Surely he was still around somewhere. The bastard hadn't finished with the torture sessions. Knowing him, the one-handed sadist would have kept it up for days until Snake had broken. Then they would have killed him. It was too easy. It was as if the terrorists wanted him to escape. Fine, he thought. I'll play into their hands. He'd trudge through the snow-covered canyon back to the nuke building. If they had a reception waiting for him there, he'd be ready for it. The blizzard had let up. It was still snowing in the canyon, but it was the kind of slow-falling snow that reminded Snake of one of those decorative glass globes that one shook to make the snow fall. The sky above had a dull, dark blue tint to it, but the stars were visible through the clouds. It was a beautiful yet unnerving effect, similar to those odd times when it rained while the sun shone. Snake checked the location of the Claymore mines with the detector and noted that they were still there. He skirted them and hugged the icy rock wall as he headed for the structure at the other end of the chasm. The Abrams tank sat in a heap where it had been hit, blackened and charred from the explosion. The dead gunners had been covered completely by the snow, buried in cold, lonely graves. The loading door to the nuke building was wide open. Again, Snake had the uneasy feeling that they wanted him to continue his mission. He kept to the edge of the wide doorway, peered inside, and saw 3 NBC troopers carrying items from one side of the storage facility to the cargo carrier that still sat on the ramp. Snake couldn't imagine how the truck was going to move anywhere with the snow so deep. Perhaps they were simply loading it to be ready sometime in the near future. He crept up the incline, removed a stun grenade from his pouch, pulled the pin, and tossed it at the truck. The bright flash lit the warehouse with a searing intensity as the 3 men hollered in surprise. 2 went down for the count, but the third stumbled blindly away from the truck. He pulled the FAMAS from his shoulder and began to shoot indiscriminately in Snake's direction. Snake hit the floor and crawled forward on his belly until he had a good angle, and then took the man out with one good shot from his sockum. It was a quick elevator ride to the first basement level. The floor was quiet and empty too. Snake wondered how many people the Shadow Moses facility employed. Where were all the civilian hostages? Had they all become brainwashed slaves of the terrorists? Or were they all lying dead somewhere, a pile of corpses resembling the horrid death pits in Nazi concentration camps? Psycho Mantis's body still lay on the floor of the commander's room, exactly where he had fallen. They don't care much for collecting their wounded or dead, do they? Snake experienced a fleeting moment of remembrance as he made his way to the secret passage. The image of Meryl holding a gun to her head, ready to blow out her brains, was not something he was likely to forget soon. The cavern passages were as damp and cold as before, but the wolf dogs no longer howled. The animals were probably sleeping, although Snake had no concept of what time it might be. It was the type of mission in which he merely kept track of how many hours had elapsed since his arrival, and how long until the deadline. Day and night were immaterial. Snake figured it had been at least 12 hours since he had climbed onto the Shadow Moses dock from the sea. He emerged from the cave into the underground passage leading to the tower base. A blood patch remained on the spot where Meryl had been shot. The sights and sounds of those terrible moments came flooding back to Snake. He wished he had made her stay behind. If only she had listened to him. If only he hadn't let her talk him into allowing her to accompany him. If only... if only... There is no such thing as if only or but in this business. It was another of Master Miller's philosophical axioms. Before moving closer to the tower, Snake swung the sniper rifle off his shoulder, looked through the scope, and spotted 2 troopers patrolling the second-floor balcony from which Sniper Wolf had taken potshots at him. The 2 men symmetrically marched back and forth, coming together in the middle of the balcony, and then moving to opposite ends before turning and repeating the pattern in reverse. Snake centered the crosshairs on one man's head and steadily followed him as he approached his colleague. As soon as the 2 men were side by side, Snake fired. The round entered the temple of the man closest to Snake, exited, and then penetrated the second man's temple. Blood and grey matter from both soldiers splattered onto the tower wall. 2 birds with 1 shot. Snake was particularly cautious when he approached the tower base. He didn't want a repeat of what had happened the last time. But no soldiers fast-roped from above, and there was no opposition waiting for him. The door from which Sniper Wolf had emerged was shut and required a level 6 PAN card to open. Snake swiped the card Otacon had given him, and the panel slid to the side, revealing a dimly lit corridor. He edged around the opening, immediately saw a security camera mounted on the far wall, and blasted it with his sockum. Snake. It was that guy again, Deep Throat. Snake, are you there? Yeah. The tower is crawling with guards. Be careful. I don't see any yet. They're all on the inside. I suggest taking the stairs to the roof and then crossing the sky bridge to the second tower. How do you know all this? Who are you? Oh, and there's a gun camera just inside the first floor staircase. You'll have to take it out as soon as you open the door. Huh, thanks. One other thing. If you make it into the second tower, go to the 3rd floor. There's a portable Stinger missile launcher in the conference room there. The terrorists were inspecting it earlier, and I'm pretty sure they left it in the room. Why would I want to carry around a Stinger missile launcher? It might come in handy. Look, Deep Throat, or whatever your name really is, I have to rely on stealth to get around. A missile launcher is heavy and cumbersome. It was just a suggestion. By the way, have you looked inside your pouch for anything that doesn't belong? What are you talking about? It might be a good idea. Are we ever gonna meet face to face? Snake asked. I don't know. Perhaps. Maybe we already have. The transmission broke off. Snake cursed to himself and grudgingly looked inside the pouch. There were grenades, the C4 device, a couple of boxes of ammunition, his rations, and something else. It was the size of a grenade, but it was something he'd never seen. It was definitely electronic, for a tiny LED indicator blinked down in seconds. He had been carrying a goddamn bomb. Snake tossed it back into the passage and ducked. The thing exploded with the strength of 2 sticks of dynamite. Snake held his position for several seconds and listened for any evidence of nearby guards. How did Deep Throat know? Snake breathed a sigh of relief and continued to the end of the hallway. There was a coiled rope hanging on the wall. He didn't know why, but he had an inclination to take it. If he was going to climb 20-something flights of stairs, a rope might just be useful. He grabbed it and put the coil around his neck. Now he really felt like a mule, with both the rope and the sniper rifle hanging from his shoulders. Snake readied the sockum, stood to the side of the stairwell door, and opened it. The gun camera, a surveillance device with a weapon attached to it, had turned automatically towards the open door, ready to register whether the person entering the stairwell was friend or foe. Snake reached around with one hand and, without looking, fired at the mechanism. It was disabled with finality. Snake then entered the stairwell, closed the door behind him, and proceeded in a vertical direction. It was going to be a long climb. He was reminded of his days at boot camp when he had to carry heavy loads up and down a hill to build his stamina. Here he was again, encumbered with a sniper rifle, a rope, a handgun, a knife, a pouch full of explosives and ammunition, and body armor. At least he felt invincible. As soon as he got to the 5th floor landing, an alarm sounded throughout the building. Snake figured his destruction of the gun camera had triggered it, or perhaps they'd found the 2 dead troopers on the 2nd floor balcony. Whatever the reason, he knew he was about to have company. Snake drew the sockum, made sure it had a full magazine, and continued his ascent. The 7th floor stairwell door burst open, and 2 troopers appeared on the landing. Before they had time to register Snake's presence, the operative had shot both of them. One man careened over the stair rail and fell several stories before colliding with a flight of steps. Snake was well aware that he had been doing an awful lot of killing since escaping from the cell. For a brief moment, he wondered if he might be overreacting to being tortured and Merrill being hurt. No, that's not it, he told himself. Time is running out. The stakes are higher. I have good reason to resort to extreme methods. Snake increased the speed of his climb, jumped over the remaining corpse, and pushed onward to the 8th floor. By the time he reached the 20th floor, he was out of breath and his legs were aching. Keeping in mind that there were only 7 more levels, he forced himself to press on. But on the 22nd floor, he encountered 3 more guards. They spotted him, shouted, and aimed their FAMAS rifles at him. The bullets chipped off pieces of concrete from the wall behind Snake. The operative dived for the landing below him, removed a frag grenade from his pouch, pulled the pin, and tossed it onto the stairs, just as the troopers descended towards him. The blast demolished several steps, and the guards fell through the hole, plummeted a story, and rolled down several more flights. When they eventually stopped moving, it was obvious from their inelegant body positions that their necks or backs were broken. Snake got up and navigated his way around the huge hole in the staircase, careful not to step on insecure pieces of concrete. By hugging the wall and edging around the hole, he was just able to do so. He stepped onto the 21st floor's landing to drink from his canteen and eat one of the ration bars he kept in the pouch. He hadn't realized how hungry he was until then, but he knew he had to conserve the food. When he reached the roof, he was met with blistering cold, high winds. There were no guards outside, thank goodness, and it appeared that Snake had a clear path to the other tower via the bridge. Dominating the roof of the second tower was a gigantic satellite dish, the complex's communications relay system. That, along with the view of the landscape, was spectacular. Looking behind him towards the sea, Snake could see the roof of the original building in the distance, the canyon separating it from the nuke building, and the snow-covered ground that blanketed the passage to the tower base. He had come a long way. Snake proceeded to move across the icy skywalk, but stopped when he heard the sound of approaching rotor blades. Oh my god. The Hind D rose from behind the roof of the second tower and unleashed half a dozen 57mm unguided rockets at the satellite dish, causing a magnificent explosion that knocked Snake from his feet. He covered his head and shielded his eyes as the entire tower shook. Daring to peek through his arms, he watched the satellite dish topple onto the bridge connecting the towers, smashing it to pieces. His only route to the second tower had been destroyed. A cackle came from the Hind D's loudspeaker system. That road is closed, Solid. Detour, detour. Liquid Snake. The villain was piloting the attack chopper again. The helicopter swung over to the first tower, placing Snake in an extremely vulnerable position. The operative got to his feet and ran back to the stairwell entrance, but Liquid let loose a Phalange P radio-guided anti-tank missile and destroyed the only possible escape route from the roof. When the smoke cleared, Snake found himself lying on the concrete, covered by debris. Again he heard the maniacal laughing coming from the chopper's loudspeaker. Snake felt the helicopter hover above him and knew he was a sitting duck. He rolled onto his back and fired the sockum at the Hind D, knowing full well it was akin to trying to kill a rhinoceros with a rubber band. More laughter from Liquid. You've got to be kidding, brother. Your puny weapons are no match for one of Russia's best pieces of warfare technology. Snake had the foresight to get to his feet and run just as Liquid fired the chopper's machine guns at the roof. The bullets followed Snake to the edge of the tower, cornering him. There was no other way off the tower except down. The rope. Snake tied an end to a girder, threw the other end over the side of the tower, and immediately began a long, difficult rappel down the building. It was something he was adept at doing, but he'd never had to rappel from a height of 27 stories and avoid gunfire from a Hind D at the same time. He got to what he thought was the 18th or 19th floor when the Hind swirled around the tower and pointed its nose at him. Look at the fly on the wall, Liquid taunted. I just love swatting flies. Another barrage of machine gun fire made a line of holes just below Snake's feet. He stopped rappelling and waited until the attack ended, and then continued his ascent. Liquid was playing with him. The pilot could shoot him down easily enough, but it appeared that the terrorist leader just wanted to scare the crap out of him. Snake reached a ledge halfway down the tower and stopped to rest. He landed on his feet and crouched there as the helicopter came around the tower to shoot again. As the chopper appeared, Snake lay prone on the ledge to avoid the gunfire, but this time Liquid fired another rocket directly at the side of the ledge. The building rocked as the platform exploded into bits, flinging Snake into the air. If he hadn't been clutching the rope, he'd have fallen to his death. The rope broke his rapid descent, but the impact jerked the life out of his arms. He screamed aloud at the pain, but refused to let go. Miraculously, the rope had not been split by the blast. He hung there for what seemed like an eternity, swinging like a pendulum as the hind circled the tower again. "Move, damn it! Move your ass!" He forced himself to continue the rappel, hand over hand, a few feet at a time, lower and lower. He would make it, had to make it. It was that or die there. Liquid's laugh filled the air as the chopper buzzed around the building's edge. The machine gun bullets dotted the building around Snake, but not one of them touched him. This convinced him that Liquid didn't really want to kill him. Yet. And that would be the terrorist leader's mistake. Snake wasn't going to let the guy have another chance if he could help it. Snake was 6 floors above the ground when the helicopter appeared again. This time, Liquid indiscriminately shot rockets at various areas on the tower, creating fireballs that expanded from the building like small suns. The intense heat seared the exposed skin on Snake's face and arms, but he maintained his grip on the rope. Lower, lower, not much farther. He touched the snow on the ground before he realized he'd made it. He dropped and fell into the blessed cold stuff, picked up a handful and rubbed it on his face, and thanked his lucky stars. The snow felt like heaven on his burned skin. But Liquid hadn't given up. The hind hovered lower and aimed at the spot where Snake lay. "Try to get to the second tower, brother. Go ahead. Give it your best shot," the terrorist mocked. Just to spite the guy, Snake pulled himself to his feet, made sure he had all his stuff, and ran for the second tower base. 2 Phalange P missiles soared out of the chopper and created a hell on earth in front of Snake. He leapt for cover and buried himself in the snow as a wave of fire and brick thundered over him. There was a tremendous rumbling as the ground shook. Debris fell on top of him, and he braced himself for the weight of something heavy and deadly. But it never came. The terror dissipated until there was only a crackling noise that filled the air. Snake lifted his head out of the snow and saw that much of the lower 2 floors of the second tower was in ruins and on fire. Whatever was holding up the building must have been awfully strong, for the tower remained standing. Nevertheless, Liquid had presented a new problem for Snake. How to get through the tower to the other side so that he could get to the underground maintenance base where Metal Gear was housed. The helicopter had disappeared. Perhaps Liquid had decided to end his game of cat and mouse for the time being. Snake made his way around the burning rubble and found a route inside the wreckage. The stairwell was unharmed, but the main entrance and lower floors were impossible to traverse. He would have to climb the stairs again. There was no gun camera awaiting him this time. He ran quickly to the 3rd floor landing, which was just above the blaze, and carefully opened the door. There were screams coming from somewhere on the level, but they were far away. Snake wasn't too concerned about them, and so he slipped into the hallway and looked for the conference room. Sure enough, he found it after a couple of jogs in the corridor. He listened at the door and heard nothing, and so he threw caution to the wind and went inside. Just as Deep Throat had said, a Stinger missile launcher lay on the table, already armed with a missile. Its open case was on the floor. Snake grinned and contacted Nastasha. "Hey, I've got me a Stinger. I just wanted to brag." "Congratulations, Snake. I hope it's not too cumbersome for you." "It utilizes a 2-color infrared ultraviolet detector with fire and forget technology, correct?" "Looks like it. I trained with one very similar." "Then I assume you need no instruction on how to use it." "No, ma'am. But thanks for asking." Nastasha laughed. "Da, no problem." After signing off, Snake picked up the launcher and decided that it wasn't much more cumbersome than the Nikita had been. Now he knew how to get rid of the hind. Snake made his way back to the stairwell and continued the ascent to the second tower's roof. He knew it was a dangerous venture. There was no telling if the fire below eventually would weaken the supports that held up the building. The images of what had happened to the World Trade Center towers on 9/11 flashed through his mind, and he hoped that the fires would not be that intense. Those towers had been undone by the tons of burning fuel from the airplanes that had crashed into them, and that was not the case here. He felt relatively secure. Nearly 15 minutes later, he arrived on the 27th floor, once again out of breath and feeling the strain in his leg muscles. He stopped to rest for a moment, drink some more water, and eat another energy bar. There was the sound of footsteps to his right. Snake drew the sockum with lightning-fast speed. Don't shoot! It's me! Don't shoot! But Snake didn't see anything. Snake! It's me! Otacon deactivated the stealth control and appeared, standing a few feet away. Otacon! Snake lowered the gun and thrust it into the holster. How did you get here? The elevator. But the first floor was destroyed. That's why I took the elevator. It's working? Uh-huh. Gosh, you're incredible. Like a movie hero or something. Snake relaxed and leaned against the wall. The fatigue was catching up to him. No, you're wrong. In the movies, the hero always saves the girl. Oh, you mean Meryl. Sorry, forget I said anything. Dr. Emmerich opened the stairwell door and looked down. No one followed you. I think you can relax. Snake didn't say anything. Listen, there's something I want to ask you, Otacon said. It's why I followed you up this far. What? Have you ever loved someone? Huh. That's what you came here to ask? No, I mean, I was wondering if even soldiers fall in love. The guy was a bigger nerd than he'd originally thought. What the hell are you trying to say? Do you think love can bloom on a battlefield? That's really a stupid question, Otacon. But to give you an answer, yeah, I do. I think at any time, any place, people can fall in love with each other. But if you love someone, you have to be able to protect them. Otacon nodded happily. I think so too. Snake rolled his eyes and moved towards the elevator. He pushed the button, but the lift was stuck on one of the lower floors. I thought you said this thing was working. That's weird. It was working before. Otacon took over pushing the button, but nothing happened. I'll go down and see. Leave it to me. I can fix it. Get it working for me, will you? Snake gazed towards the roof. Now I have to go and swat a fly. Okay, I'll hold down the fort. Good luck. Oh, there's something I forgot to tell you. What? There were 5 stealth camouflage prototypes in my lab. You know, where I got the one I'm wearing? Yeah, so? If you take out the one I have, that leaves 4. This isn't first-grade math class, Otacon. What's your point? I thought I'd get one for you, so I went back to the lab and, well, the 4 suits were missing. Just thought you'd want to know that. Snake frowned and eyed his new friend, who looked as if he'd been through the ringer and had emerged only half intact. You really look like hell. You okay? Don't worry. I just turn the switch and it doesn't matter. I just pretend like I'm not here. Then I'm not scared. He flicked on the stealth control and vanished. Snake shook his head. Strange logic. I'm counting on you. See you later. He then strode to the stairwell, went inside, and climbed the last flight of stairs to the roof. Once again, a blast of cold wind struck him in the face. The roof was a mishmash of burned rubble from the earlier destruction of the satellite dish. Black smoke from the burning lower floors filtered up into the sky, creating an ominous backdrop for the battle that was about to occur. All right, you bastard, Snake muttered. Show yourself. As if on cue, the chop-chop sound of the rotor blades grew louder until the giant insect-like hind D rose over the side of the roof. So, the snake has finally come up out of his hole. The loudspeaker boomed over the noise of the chopper. Are you ready now, brother? Why are you calling me brother? Snake shouted. Who the hell are you? I'm you! I'm your shadow! What? Ask father! I'll send you to hell to meet him! With that, two S5s shot out of the pods towards the spot where Snake was standing. The operative ran sideways and leaped onto the ice that covered the roof. Like a baseball player sliding into home plate, Snake held the Stinger launcher against his chest and glided on his back across the only unobstructed strip of surface. The deafening explosion behind him jolted the building, and for a moment he was afraid the roof might cave in. He stopped himself from sliding off the edge of the building by slamming his legs against a large piece of rubble that had once been part of the dish. Then, using the wreckage as cover, Snake crouched and readied the Stinger launcher. He rested the launching tube on his shoulder, focused the sights on the hind, and switched on the guidance system. Liquid Snake must have seen what his enemy was about to do, for he pulled back on the chopper's joystick to elevate the aircraft. But the missile launcher was made to follow the target. The missile was locked onto it. Who's going to hell now, Liquid? Snake said as he pulled the trigger. The heat-sensitive Stinger burst out of the launcher, giving Snake a satisfying kick. Even as the hind rose higher, the missile stayed on track until it plunged into the bottom of the aircraft. It took only a couple of seconds, and it was better than the 4th of July. The back end of the hind disintegrated into a fireball, sending pieces of metal and burning debris in all directions. The blazing hulk wavered in mid-air as if it was trying to decide what to do, and then it buckled and began spiraling to the earth. A trail of flaming junk followed it down. That takes care of the cremation, Snake said. He went back to the stairwell. The door had been blown by Liquid's rockets, and stepped inside. He punched Emmerich's frequency on the codec. Otacon? Hey, Snake. I saw the whole thing from a window. That was fantastic. I'm glad you liked it. But Snake, I think I saw something come out of the cockpit. Looked like a person. You mean he ejected? I couldn't tell for sure. Maybe. Damn, then it isn't over. Well, come on down. The elevator's working. You fixed it? No, that's the weird thing. It just moved by itself. It's headed your way now. So, I can get to where Metal Gear's being stored from the bottom of this building? Yeah. The entrance to the underground maintenance base is towards the back of the snowfield behind the tower. Just remember to take the elevator to the 3rd floor, because below that, it's an inferno. You'll have to take the stairs from the 3rd floor down to the ground. Okay. Find a safe place to hide. Right. The elevator should be at the top by now. Thanks. Out. Out. Snake descended to the 27th floor and pushed the elevator button. The doors opened, and sure enough, the empty car was there. He stepped inside and pressed the number 3. But he wasn't alone.